This is Ruger 1022 Takedown Lite, Range Report 1. Portions of today's video were filmed at the beautiful Banner shooting range, so there will be some background noise to contend with. But on the bright side, the annual pass is on sale. On sale or not, I'm a big fan of the annual pass and think it is a fantastic bargain. And now, let's hit the range! Okay, I spent the morning here sighting in my new scope for my 1022 Lite, and I used CCI stangers on it. And what we're going to do now is let's just do a quick pattern comparison between my favorite ammo, CCI Mini Mag, and the ammo that I sighted this rifle in, the CCI Stangers. Now to do the Stangers, I'm going to shoot at the top right of the target. Top right bullseye. Let's see how we can do here. Okay. Not the world's most spectacular group, but I think either 7 of 10 or 8 of 10 are in the inner black ring. Let's do CCI Mini Mags now at the bottom right target, and we'll see how the grouping compares. I expect it to be a little lower with Mini Mag having less velocity theoretically than Stangers. Let's find out. Here we go.
Can I come in?
Okay, a little bit lower than I thought. I might need to push my optic to the right, barely. Okay, let's reload. All right, let's take a brief break from the range to look at some of the numbers on this Ruger 1022 Takedown Lite. The firearm is 34 and 62 1/100ths of an inch long. The barrel is 16 and 12 1/100ths inch long, made of an alloy steel. The firearm weighs in at 4.5 pounds unloaded. It comes with a single 10-round rotary box-fed magazine, which these classic 10-rounders are probably the most reliable of them all. So not a bad thing that comes with the 10-1. Now, one question I'm sure many people have, like I did, is what separates the Takedown Lite from the Takedown version? Well, let's try to answer that question, or at least take a stab at it and see how we do. The standard 1022 Takedown, which there's so many different versions. The one that we see up here on the left side of your screen is what we're going to call the standard 1022 Takedown. You'll notice it weighs in at 4.6 pounds, 1/10 of a pound. Is that really enough difference to say light versus no light? Well, I don't think the light version is actually the light version of the standard 1022 Takedown. And let me show you why I think that is. There is another version among the many versions. We're going to call this the 1022 Takedown Heavy. Now this one looks remarkably similar to the 1022 Takedown Lite, with the only difference that I can see being the 16 and 12/100ths of an inch barrel that is a bull barrel that's fluted, making this firearm weigh in at 5.3 pounds or 0.8 of a pound heavier than the light version of the 1022 Takedown. So we have the 1022 Lite and what we're going to call the 1022 Heavy. So keep that in mind. That's an unofficial name that's just given by us to help differentiate some things in this video. Now, one thing that both of these firearms come with is a case, a very nice case for, well, for what the firearms cost, it's a decent case. It's a nice sized case. You can see on there where I replaced the Ruger patch with my Macho Man Randy Savage patch. Inside, the firearm, when broken in half, fits nicely in there with some Velcro straps to keep it in place. And if you find the right optic, you can even leave your optic attached, which I thought was nice. There is some additional space there between the stock of the rifle and, we're going to say, the top of the case, to where you could strap, say, an optic or some extra magazines or whatever you want in there. So there is a little bit of extra room in there. You can store like the manual in the top of the case. I wouldn't store anything else though, just because it's going to bump into things like your optic and whatnot, and I would just prefer to keep it flat. That's just a me thing. Anyway, let's move on. Now, outside of the case, when broken in half, this would be a good example of what the rifle looks like. And conveniently, because the rifle breaks in half, we can actually very easily show parts of it here on this video without having to worry about, did we point a fully assembled firearm at something or someone or whatever. So the barrel here, this is the 16 and 12/100ths of an inch barrel. Man, the way these cameras reverse things gets confusing. From the 1022 Takedown Lite. Now you'll notice here, you can see in the aluminum shroud that there are some holes drilled into it. I think to help radiate heat from that inner barrel, since the shroud is really just covering an inner, more pencil-style barrel on that 1022. And then you have here on the muzzle end a threaded muzzle end to where you can attach something like Ruger's SR silencer, I think they call it, whatever they... Silent SR suppressor, which this is 1/2 by 28 thread pattern on there for those that are curious. So let's put that back on real quick. Now, other than the shrouded aluminum shroud versus the, what I'm going to call the fluted bull barrel, as far as I can tell, that's the only difference between the light and the heavy version of the 1022 Takedown. And I think that is what accounts for the almost a pound difference in weight. Okay, another noticeable before we put this down is, you may or may have not noticed that there is no front iron sight on this. That'll come back into play in a minute. Okay, what we're going to call the stock side of the firearm here, this uses Ruger's modular stock system. And if you have no idea what that means, it means this firearm comes with a second stock piece. Why? The one that comes attached on the firearm has what they call the low comb stock. Inside the case, you get what they call the high comb stock, which I think has more of like a high cheek riser on it. I prefer the low one. I find the high one bumped into my hearing. I like the big fat hearing protection, and I feel like it bumped into my hearing protection. And even though I double up with inner and outer hearing protection, I don't like it when stuff bumps into my hearing protection, so I go with the low one. That's a me thing, though hearing protection extremely important. Don't ever shoot without it. If you can help it. The firearm has the standard 1022 action. It's a semi-automatic rotary box-fed magazine fed firearm chambered in 22 long rifle. It is semi-automatic. some notables here is the 1022s, they do not lock the bolt open on empty. You have to manually lock the bolt open, which means quite frequently, unless you're good at counting, you will end up firing on a empty chamber at some point or multiple times during the day. No big deal. You just keep on trucking. The one thing I find is I find this bolt release to be it's easy to engage the bolt release in my opinion, but I find it very, at times, it's like, how do I... Now the reason for that comes down to some of my other 1022s and some features that YouTube will not allow us to talk about without demonetizing the video. Become a member of the channel. We're going to post some videos that we don't have to worry about monetization on why this challenges me on the stock 1022, we'll say, to keep things safe for YouTube. Monetization. Now it does have the standard magazine release, which I feel like this, they say that it's, I mean, it's easy to use. It works pretty good. Some magazines, aftermarket ones, they won't drop free or they won't be as reliable. The optic on your rifle, you're going to mount to Ruger's rail, which is the standard Ruger rail that comes with pretty much every 1022 that I'm aware of. We'll see if we can get a good shot of that on the camera for you. Now you want to make sure that you get this thing, these screws, properly fastened, and I recommend Loctiting them down as well, because over time, if you don't Loctite them down, the vibration of plinking will eventually walk them a little loose, and then if this rail starts to rattle a little bit, it'll affect your accuracy. So, or I should say your your precision and your accuracy, both will suffer. So make sure you get the screws properly fastened and Loctited down. Now another note here, since we are on this end of the firearm, is this is the aluminum tensioner. We're going to call it the bushing, I think they call it. Oh, sleeve. Aluminum sleeve. This is the aluminum sleeve. Now, you can rotate this sleeve to tighten and loosen the bushing. And what is important here is you want to make sure that you have the proper tension between your rifle barrel and your stock. If the bushing is too loose and you feel just like a micro bit of play in there, that will translate to, for example, like say you're shooting at a 50-yard target and you do like 4 shots, and they're like all touching, and then your 5th shot will be like 8 inches to the right or to the left. That's because you got that little bit of micro play in there, and that little bit of play, as distance goes down, is getting magnified. So make sure you have this properly tightened. There's plenty of good videos on YouTube already on how to do that. Now another important feature to mention on the firearm is it does have the manual cross bolt safety here. So with the black safe, red fire, good feature to have. One other mentionable here is the Ruger rail. You're going to need, you got to mount that to the firearm. You'll notice there's also no rear sight for iron sights. So you have to, the only way that you can use this firearm is with some type of sight attached to the rail, which means for most people, no iron sights at all. Let's get our optic back on here real quick. This way. This way. We're good. All right. Before we get to the conclusion of today's video, let's head back to that range one more time. I bet what happened. Now that I think. Okay, I know what happened. I adjusted it the wrong way. A top right little target. We'll shoot the bottom right little target. These are with the CCI stingers. All right. I like it. We have reached the conclusion to yet another video. Now, one question people might have right off the bat is, why is this range report 1 and not first range report? And the simple answer is, our first range reports are videos that we do after our first trip to the range with a firearm, our first experience with it, you know, what went well, what didn't go well that first time, details on it, yada, yada, yada. We've had this 1022 Takedown Lite for at least 2 months now. Been to the range many, many times with it and have well over 500 rounds through it. Why? Well, the simple explanation and the real explanation is I've been just trying to find the right scope for it. I tried some comically large, what some people would think would be like overpowered, maybe overpowered optics. I tried others. I almost actually settled on this classic Burris sharpshooter 4-power scope. Kind of a nice classic scope. I like it. But what ended up winning out that you noticed, or maybe you didn't, is this UTG, I always want to call it UKG, UTG Bug Buster. And this is a 3 to 9 power scope. What I like about it is that it's more compact in length. So it fits nicely on my 1022, which then fits nicely in the case. I would say in my price range, or at least what I was comfortable paying for an optic on my 1022, this was the only one that jumped out at me that would satisfy all my needs as far as enough magnification, fit on the rifle in the case, that I had experience with, that I know it was going to hold 0 on a 22 and be plenty accurate out to the 100 or maybe 125-ish yards I might occasionally push the range on my 1022 out to. That's far from what most people would consider long distance 22 shooting, but for where I'm going to shoot this 1022, which is probably 25 to 125 yard range, this UTG optic fits my budget perfectly well, holds 0 perfectly well. One of the big downsides, in my opinion, let's put this down, we don't need it anymore, on this 1022 Takedown Lite is, and even the, what we're going to call the heavy, price. With Rugers, do you pay MSRP? Not very often. You quite frequently see, especially in their 1022 line, the firearms listed below MSRP. Even below MSRP on the light and the heavy, for some models of the 1022, you may be able to buy 2 of them or more, which I don't know if it is really worth that price difference, in my opinion. Like my base model 1022, before I did things to it that I can't talk about in this video without YouTube demonetizing it, it was every bit as good of a performer in terms of holes on paper between 25 and 125 yards as what this 1022 Takedown Lite will be. Is there, we're going to say $400 value difference between the standard 1022 and this 1022 Takedown Lite? In my opinion, no. Do I like it? Yes, I like it a lot. It's a very fun firearm, and it's the only 1022 in the Cruise collection that we can show on this channel by virtue of it being a stock 1022, so it's also got that going for you. Now, you might be asking, well, if you don't think it's a good value buy, why did you spend too much on it? And the answer to that comes down to, and there are going to be viewers who don't like this answer. They're going to get rabid in the comments, and that's fine. I did a trade. So for me, my wallet is not hurting nearly as much as what the MSRP would suggest. Traded something I didn't like, I didn't enjoy shooting, that basically I wasn't ever going to shoot again for something that I'm going to have and I've already had a lot of fun at the range with. Well, anyway, that's my conclusion to the video. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the presentation, and as always, have a good day. We'll let Fred finish his drinking here. We had a good drink, huh, Fred?